Today class, and today's topic is on your greatest enemy. Actually, in spiritual life, many people make beginnings, and after they make a beginning, I would say majority of them fall away because they make a start, but after they've made a start, after a month or 2 months or 3 months of enthusiastic effort, suddenly there is slackening in the effort and the dissipation of the spiritual practices, and eventually they go back to whatever they were doing right in the beginning. I have not seen it once or twice or thrice, I have seen it hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of times. Then there are those people who come to spiritual life and they seem to be very steady and very fired up. And they remain in spiritual life very active, very enthusiastic for a year, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, and then they fall away. Then there are those who come to spiritual life, and after coming to spiritual life, after 10, 15 years, after taking sannyas, after being given the appellation of Guru, suddenly they vanish from the scene of active spiritual life. So, when we see this happening to people around us, we must try to understand what is really happening, because if we don't understand what is happening to people around us, it can happen to us also. In fact, spiritual life is like a battlefield, and there are people who are being shot all around us, and unless we know where the bullets are coming from, it's very likely that we will also fall victim to the same bullets. In fact, we often ask people that what do you think is your greatest obstacle in spiritual life? Or we ask people, what is your greatest enemy in spiritual life? And what answer do they give? The commonest answer they give is, yes, Maya. You see, Maya, illusion is the greatest obstacle in spiritual life. But where is this illusion situated? From where does it arise? How does it get hold of you? And how can we combat it? In fact, when the Americans fought the war in Vietnam, the world's richest nation with the best soldiers, the best equipped, after fighting a long battle with probably the world's poorest nation, eventually had to leave the battlefield. So people were always wondering that how come the Americans, who were the richest nation, best soldiers, best weapons, how did they lose battle with the Vietnamese who were so poor and ill-equipped? So I remember reading an interview with an American soldier, and they asked him, what do you think, as the man on the field, what do you think was the reason why you all had to leave the battlefield? And you know what answer he gave? He said the answer was that in actual fact we never knew who the enemy was. He says we would go, the whole troop would come, we would march around, we would patrol the countryside, and we would never see the enemy anywhere. We would play with the children, we'd give them sweets. Then before we knew what was happening, suddenly we would all be shot down. Suddenly an old lady would be coming along, would leave a basket on a bicycle nearby us, and that basket would contain a bomb. Or a child would come and put a hand grenade in the midst of us and run away. So we never really knew who the enemy was. So if you don't know who the enemy is, then how can you fight a war? You have to lose. So also in spiritual life, unless we are aware who our enemy is, unless we are very clear what we are up against, we must lose the battle in spiritual life. Therefore, it's very important to know who the enemy is. And the enemy is none other than the mind. The enemy is none other than the mind. In fact, in the Srimad Bhagavatam, there is a very interesting story. And this story in the Srimad Bhagavatam is a story which is related by an Avadut to the ancestor of the Yadu dynasty. So the ancestor of the Yadu dynasty is being related a story by this Brahman Avadut, and he tells him the story of a Brahmin from Avanti. He says this Brahmin was very intelligent, he was very learned, and in addition to all this, he was also very rich. And since he had all the wonderful qualities as well as wealth, he had large family, many relatives living with him, many friends, many business associates, and he was leading a happy life. But one day what happened? He lost all his money. He lost all his money, he lost all his livelihood. Completely, absolutely. When he lost all his money, what happened? First of all his friends left him. Every single one of his friends left him. Actually, this is one of the tests. How do you know who your real friend is? Your friend is one who sticks to you through thick and thin. Your friend is one who sticks to you and knows what is best for you, and even if things are not going well for you, he remains with you. In fact, the other day somebody told me, he said that when I started becoming God conscious and I started becoming Krishna conscious, now my friends have started abandoning me. They say, "Arey Sala, you're not eating meat, how can we call you to our house? You don't serve alcohol in your house, how can we come there? There's nothing to entertain us." So I said, then you know who your real friends are. Because the real friends will prepare food that you eat. The real friends will come to visit you even if you don't serve alcohol. These are your real friends. But the best way to find out who your friends are is when you have lost everything. And this poor Brahmin of Avanti, he discovered that when he lost all his wealth, he lost all his friends also. All of them were fair weather friends. So when he lost all his friends, gradually, even his relatives began to abandon him. First the extended family, because he was living in a large joint family which he was supporting. And then gradually everybody, even his children who were grown up, left. And finally his wife also left to go and live with the children. And this poor Brahmin was left all alone. He had no friends, no family, no wealth. And being all alone, he thought about the situation that he was in. And he thought that maybe God has been kind to me. He has taken everything away from me so that I can depend on Him. So let me, now that I have lost everything, let me take wholeheartedly to spiritual life. And this Brahmin took the order of sannyas. So he became a sannyasi. So you would have thought that now that he has made a great step in spiritual life, he has entered into spiritual life. And having entered into spiritual life wholeheartedly, now there should be no problems for him. But in actual fact, his problems had only just begun. Because although he had taken sannyas, nobody showed any respect for him. When he would walk through the streets, people would say, this fellow, when he had a lot of money, he was a very proud man. Now that he's lost everything, he is taken to spiritual life. Now that he's in difficulty, he is taken to spiritual life. So nobody had any respect for him. When he would walk through the streets, children used to pelt him with stones. People used to talk rudely and abusively to him. When he used to sit down and eat food by the bank of the river, children used to come and spit on the top of his head, or they would try to pass urine when he had spread the food on the ground. When he was sleeping, people would steal his bag of beads, they would steal his sannyas danda. When he would take a Maun Rath, they would come and they would beat him with sticks. So that being beaten with sticks, he had no choice but to open his mouth and say something, even if it was in pain. So this was the miseries that this poor Brahmin of Avanti went through. This was the misery that he went through. That not only he lost his family, his wealth, his friends, but even after taking through spiritual life, the miseries did not leave him. In fact, people persecuted him more and more and more. So at this point, Krishna is actually relating this story to Uddhava. So Krishna tells Uddhava in the Uddhav Gita that this Brahmin was able to tolerate, he was able to bear all the sufferings and all the miseries simply by singing what is known as the song of the Avanti Brahmana. Simply by singing the song of the Avanti Brahmana, he was able to bear all the sufferings and all the miseries. So Uddhava asks Krishna that please let me hear the song that he sang. What is the song that helped him to bear his miseries? Because I also have miseries and everybody has miseries. And simply if we hear this song when we are in misery, we can also chant this song and maybe we will also be able to bear our miseries. Because in this world, nobody is free of misery. This is known as Dukh Alayam or Shashvatam. This is a place of misery where everything is temporary. It's also known in the Bhagavad Gita as Anityam Asukham Lokam. This is a place where nothing is permanent and there is no happiness in this world. It's Asukham Lokam. So Krishna tells him the song the Avanti Brahmana used to sing, because he was being persecuted and tortured by so many people. And you know what he used to sing? He used to say, Nayam jano me sukha dukha hetur. He says, these people who are persecuting me, they are not responsible for my distress. Very often we think that the cause of our problems is just this one rascal. If something is done to this one rascal, then everything will work out fine for me. That person may be anybody. It may be your father. In Kali Yuga, it may be your father, it may be your brother, it may be your business partner, it may be your boss, it may be anybody, maybe your employee, maybe your employer. But there is always somebody we find to blame for our miseries. We say, this is the person who is responsible for my miseries. Everything in my life is going smoothly and wonderfully, but this one person is the cause of my miseries. If something is done to him, everything in my life will run smoothly. But he says very clearly, he says, Nayam jano me sukha dukha hetur. No, he says, these people are not responsible for the miseries that I am suffering. He says, No devata atma griha karma kal. No devata. Sometimes we feel that if we do not propitiate the demigods, then they will cause suffering and misery for us. I remember one gentleman who came and told me, he says, you say that Krishna is Supreme Personality of Godhead, but I have been worshipping Ganesh. Every year I bring him to my home. Now this year, I know that if I don't bring Ganesh to my home, what will happen? He will bring misery on me, because he will not be satisfied. He will inflict all kinds of misery on me if I don't bring him this year. So I am forced to bring him. So what happens? You often blame the demigods that, oh, because I have not done this for this devata, or I have not done this for that devata, those devatas will trouble me and harass me and bother me. I remember my friend used to feel that if on Saturday he did not go to Hanuman Mandir, then he was in bad trouble. Why? Because he would be put in a difficult situation. So people always believe that some demigod or the other is going to bother him. So he said, no devata, not the demigods, not these people are harassing me, these people are not harassing me, neither are the demigods harassing me. No devata, atma. Sometimes we feel the body. Atma also means body, it also means mind, it also means soul. Here it means body. So sometimes we feel our body is causing us distress. Today I met one patient who was telling me, he says, doctor, everything in life is wonderful for me. Only this body of mine is causing so much pain and distress and misery. So all my sufferings are due to these bodily conditions. I agree with you that once we free ourselves from this body, then only we can be happy. Because the body causes miseries and unhappiness. But this Avanti Brahmana says that no, he says, Nayam jano me sukha dukha hetur. No, devata atma, not this body also is the cause of your miseries. Sometimes we feel that if I had a better body, a healthier body, a fitter body, I would be better. He says, no, it's not your body that's causing you distress. He says, neither griha. Sometimes we feel stars are responsible. Now, devata atma griha. My friend came and told me, he says, now I am in trouble. I said, what happened? He says, Abhi mera साढ़े साथी शुरू होने वाला है. I said, what is this साढ़े साथी? He says, 7.5 years of Saturn. And these 7.5 years of Saturn mean that Saturn is going to harass you and harass you and harass you and harass you. So now my Sade Sati is beginning. This is the time and period when I am really going to go through a difficult time. So as I pointed out, my friend, he feels that if he doesn't go to Hanuman Mandir on Saturday, then there is nobody to protect him from Shani. So Shani will come and will give him a lot of distress and lot of unhappiness. Sometimes people feel that they are going through, I have friends who are also very interested in astrology. In fact, myself, I have taken great interest in astrology. So people feel that because I am going through the Mahadasha of the worst period, worst planet in my horoscope, I am going through great difficulty. Now I have to suffer for 10 years. And after this 10-year Mahadasha is over, only then I will have a comfortable time in life. But this Brahmin says very clearly, he says, Nayam jano me sukha dukha hetur na devata atma griha. Not even the stars are responsible. He says, no, griha karma kal. Sometimes we feel that karma is responsible for my suffering. All the impious activities that I have done in the past, These impious activities that I have done in the past are bearing fruit today. And because the impious activities of the past are bearing fruit today, therefore I am studying. I am suffering. In fact, there was one, yesterday I met one lady who was saying, my mother, she always says that when sufferings come upon her, she says, ye to mere pichle janam ke karma honge. That's why I am suffering. So she blames the karma that she done in the past for the present suffering. But he says, no, not even your karma is responsible for your suffering. And neither Kal. Sometimes we say that it is eternal time that is responsible for all our miseries, because time takes everything away. It takes away family, friends, relations. It takes away money, it takes away a job, it takes away eventually your own life. So sometimes people blame Kal. So he says, not even Kal, not even time is responsible for my suffering. So Nayam Jano me Sukha Dukha Etur no Devata Atma Griha Karma Kala. Never blame all these people for your miseries. It's not people who are torturing you. Neither the demigods, nor your body, nor your bad stars, nor your past karma, not even eternal time itself. Then what is responsible for the suffering? This was identified by the Brahmin of Avanti, and because he was able to identify the main cause of his suffering, he was able to tolerate the miseries. And what did he identify as the cause of his sufferings? He said very clearly, he said, Mana param karanam amananti sansara chakram parivartayedyat. It is my mind and my mind only which is the cause of all my sufferings. It's my mind and it's my mind only which is the cause of all my sufferings. And he says, and it is my mind that drags me again and again into the cycle of birth and death. So the cause of the miseries is not other people. The cause of miseries is not your body, not the demigod, not your bad stars, not your previous karma, not even eternal time. The cause of all your sufferings in this world is none other than your own mind. It is your mind that is your greatest enemy, and it is your mind that is the cause of your suffering. Sometimes people say that, no, I don't agree, it's my mind. These things are actually real. Things are actually troubling me. I have got a diseased body. I am going through my Sadhisati period. I have offended the demigod. I have performed bad karma for which I am suffering today. But these are only external manifestations of suffering. The actual suffering takes place inside here. The actual suffering takes place inside here. It takes place because of your mind. For one who has controlled his mind, there is no suffering. Therefore it has been said that the mind is your greatest enemy, your mind is your greatest friend. For one who has controlled his mind, the mind is the greatest friend. But for one who has not controlled his mind, the mind is the greatest enemy. In the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, Bandhur atmana atmanastasya yena atmayava atmana jita anatmanastu shatrutve vartet atmayava tu shatruvat. That the mind can be your greatest friend or your greatest enemy. For one who's controlled the mind is the greatest friend. For one who has not controlled the mind is the greatest enemy. And the mind is the cause of all suffering. You see people who are going through unimaginable difficulties, but they are unshaken by them because they have controlled their mind. That is the definition of a person who has controlled his mind. So once again, it is the mind which is your greatest enemy. It is the mind which is the cause of sufferings. And finally, it is your mind which makes you fall down from spiritual life and re-enter into material life. Actually, you cannot get rid of your mind. Your mind is your constant companion. Where you go, your mind will go with you. I remember one boy came to me and told me, he says, I am absolutely disgusted now with what I am doing here in India. I've got serious plans to emigrate to America, and once I go to America, I'll be happy. So I told him that, look, you're still young. You may go to America, but if you go to America, you're taking your greatest enemy along with you. Your mind is going to accompany you right from here to America. And the cause of your misery is not your external circumstances. The cause of your misery is your mind. And if you are not able to control your mind, then you will be taking your misery on your back along with you. I remember we used to have the stories of Sinbad the sailor. So in Sinbad the sailor, there is an example of Sinbad the sailor who's marooned on a desert island. And when he goes on a desert island, what does he find? He finds an old hunchbacked, wretched looking man sitting on the beach. And that hunchbacked dwarf, old man, he looks at him and says that I am crippled and hunchbacked, please carry me. Because if you carry me, I'll be able to get up from this beach and go to some place more comfortable. So Sinbad, being very kind to him, takes him on his back. But once that old man is on his back, he has great distress, because that old man is the old man of the sea and he has no intention of getting off from Sinbad's back. Not only he sits on his back, but he locks his ankles behind Sinbad's shoulder blades and holds on to Sinbad's hair and ear, and he makes him go here and there and here and there, and he bites him and kicks him and he boxes him until Sinbad does exactly what he wants. So our mind is like the old man of the sea on Sinbad the sailor's back. Try as you may, you cannot get rid of him. And that mind will accompany you and it will force you to do exactly what it wants to do. You know that it is bad. You know that you shouldn't do it. You know that you should be doing something else. But your mind will drag you and force you and pinch you and box you and pull your hair and pull your ear and force you to do exactly what you should not do. And try as you might, there is no way that you can take the mind off your back. Because the mind is the most difficult thing to control. In the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna is talking to Arjuna and Arjuna tells him, he says, Chanchalahi mana Krishna pramati balavadridam tasyaham nigram manye vayuriva saduskaram. He says, my mind is restless, it is turbulent, it is obstinate. Restless, turbulent and obstinate, and to try to control my mind is like trying to control the wind. To try to control the mind is like trying to control the wind. So it is impossible to try to control the mind or get rid of it, because the mind will harass you and force you to do exactly what you should not do. And the characteristics of the mind are such that it will completely fool you into thinking that you are doing the right thing. Because the mind can convince you exactly what it wants to convince you. It will make you believe that what you are doing is the right thing. It will give you hundreds of arguments and thousands of arguments and millions of arguments why what you are doing is the best thing under the right circumstances. And no matter how you try to approach the mind will try to escape from your efforts to control it. It's like trying to kill a cockroach. Anyone here tried to kill a cockroach? Even if you corner a cockroach in the corner of the room and you approach it with a slipper to bang the cockroach to death, suddenly the cockroach will flatten itself and get into a crevice and will be out of your reach. So the mind is like that. At least cockroach you can see, the mind you can't see. Sometimes you think you are the mind. So how can you actually control the mind or kill it? Because it is absolutely impossible to try to control it by normal means. It will escape, it will wriggle, it will squeeze, it will rationalize, it will argue and explain to you, and it will convince you that what you are doing is the right thing. This is the nature of the mind. And the qualities of the mind are such that it has got three main defects. What are the three main defects of the mind? One is, its first defect is it has got mala, that means it has got impurities. What are these impurities? These impurities are the past impressions that are already inflicted and present in the mind. Lust, anger, greed, envy, illusion, madness, these are all the mal, all the impurities that are there in the mind. And these impurities are remaining in the mind waiting to manifest themselves. And every activity which you do, which is motivated by lust, anger, greed, envy, illusion, madness, that is stored in the mind as mal. I remember my friend in medical college, he was telling me, he says, look, don't give me lectures about avoiding illicit sex and waiting until I get married. He said, see, I made up my mind that until I get married, I will have as much fun with as many women and girls as I like, but once I get married, I'll be very faithful to my wife. So I said, do you realize what you're doing? He said, what do you think I'm doing? I told you this is what I'll do. I said, just try to understand one thing. You have underestimated the capacity of your mind. Every action you do, which is actually motivated by lust, anger, greed, envy, illusion, is imprinted in your mind. You think that when you are with your wife, you will be alone. You are not going to be alone with your wife. When you are with your wife, all your former girlfriends will also be sitting around you. Why? Because you'll be carrying them with you in your mind. And this is a fact. I told him, you do what you want and you tell me after you get married whether what I said is correct or not. And you will notice that you are never alone with a woman that you have married, because you are carrying with you that mull, that impurities. And those impurities in the form of those women will accompany you wherever you are. You are carrying them as your baggage on your back. These mental impressions are permanently installed in your brain now. So this is the mull that everybody carries around. Then we have vikshep. The mind is always tossing. It's always restless. It can never sit in one place. It is impossible for the mind to sit in one place. In fact, the mind has been compared to a street dog. Have you seen a street dog anywhere? Dog never sits in one place. It's always looking for some interesting smell, and it will go to one place, find something interesting. After some time it will get bored. Again, it's always roaming from one place to the other. It can never be sitting in one place. Therefore, it goes from one place to another place to another. And what happens to the street dog? It gets kicked. It goes to one place. When it gets a kick, then it leaves and goes to the next place. That is the nature of the mind. The mind will pursue one train of thoughts until it gets one kick. Then when you get a kick, mental kick, and you realize that, oh, I was not doing the right thing, then you will still go in another direction. And so this is the nature of the mind. Like a street dog will go sniffing in all the dirtiest places until it is forcibly kicked and thrown out. In fact, the mind is also compared to the monkey. The monkey cannot sit still on one tree. It's always swinging from branch to branch. It's always swinging from one place to the other. This is the nature of the mind. It is always restless and it is always turbulent. It can never sit still in one place. And don't think that you can actually try to control this restlessness. Have you ever seen mercury? Mercury in a thermometer? Try to take mercury in a thermometer and close your fist over it. The mercury will slip out from between your fingers. And when it falls, each one drop of mercury will become hundreds of drops of mercury. Hundreds, literally hundreds, you will see shiny globules of mercury on the floor. So also the mind has a tendency that it can never be gripped, because it always slips out of your grasp. Not only it slips out of your grasp, but it goes in 1,000,000 directions. It goes in 1,000,000 directions. And lastly, the mind contains within it the ability of avarana. That is, it covers over. How does it cover over? The ability of the mind is that it covers you over with the illusion. What illusion does it cover you over with? The illusion of permanency. This is the illusion in the world. In the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says that na sato vidyate bhavo na bhavo vidyate sata ubayor api drishtantas tva anayos tattvadarshibhi. That of what is unreal there is no continuation, and of that which is real there is no cessation. This is what learned seers have concluded. That if something is unreal, then it will not last. But if something is real, it will be permanent. But in the world we see around us, what is permanent? Nothing is permanent in the world. Nothing is permanent. Can you name anything just now which you see with your eyes, hear with your ears, smell with your nose, taste with your tongue, touch with your skin that is permanent? Nothing that you can perceive through your senses is permanent. And yet the nature of the mind is, it will convince you absolutely that whatever is around you that you can perceive with your senses is permanent and will always be there. In fact, it is said that the illusion of the mind has got two abilities. It's called avarnatmika shakti and prakshepatmika shakti. Avarnatmika shakti is covering over and prakshepatmika shakti is pulling down. So I remember when we used to go and play in the swimming pool. One fellow would swim underwater and catch that fellow's leg and pull him underneath. Another fellow would come from the top and hold his head down to see that it didn't come up. This is the nature of illusion of the mind. It pulls you under and then forces you down. It keeps you covered up. It sees that you don't come up for air. Therefore, this is the nature of the mind. And to control this mind is more difficult than anybody can imagine. In fact, people have struggled to control the mind for hundreds and thousands and millions of lifetimes. And yet, sooner or later, they always fall down. We have the great example of Vishwamitra Muni. He meditated for 60,000 years. After meditating for 60,000 years, his mind was attracted by the tinkling of the bells on the feet of the beautiful dancer. And he opened his eyes, and then the second sense captured him. And the second sense captured him, he was completely lost. Therefore, it has been said in the Bhagavad Gita that even one sense, even a single sense, can actually drag you to destruction. Even a single sense, just hearing, just imagine, only hearing can drag you to destruction. You may close your eyes, you may control your tongue, you may not touch anything, but just hearing brought about his downfall. It's like in your house. If you have 10 doors and you keep 9 of them closed, the thief can enter through the 10th door. This actually happened in my house. We lock the doors and windows, all of them. We have grills over our windows. But yet one day a thief entered our house, and having entered our house, after ransacking the house, he left the main door open and went out. So you're wondering, how did he come in? Then we went and saw that the servant's bathroom is only such a small window. But he had put a ladder there and he had climbed through the servant's bathroom and come in through that window and come into the house. So we always think that we have controlled our senses, we have controlled our mind. But through a small chink that we have left, climbs in and it drags us to destruction. Because this in fact is the nature of the mind. And unless we know how to control the mind, there will be no possibility for us to make further progress in spiritual life. In fact, the more you struggle against the mind, the more powerful the mind becomes. The more you struggle against the mind, the more powerful the mind becomes. It's like being stuck in quicksand. Have you seen quicksand? Quicksand sucks you and sucks you and sucks you until you're up to your neck. And the more you struggle in the quicksand, the faster it pulls you down. The faster it pulls you down. So this is the nature of the mind. That the more you struggle against the mind, the happier the mind is. Aha, wonderful, let him struggle. Because through that struggle, he is getting more and more into my clutches. In fact, there's a famous story I'd like to relate to you. It's here from the Yoga Vasisht. It is a story of King Sikkidwaja. King Sikkidwaja was a great king. And he had a beautiful wife by the name of Chudalai. And she was an accomplished yogini. She was a highly realized, exalted soul. But usually husbands never think their wives are spiritually advanced. They always think they are more spiritually advanced than their wives. So he never took her very seriously. And although they had everything that anyone could want, King Sikkidwaja was dissatisfied. Why was he dissatisfied? Why else? Because he had not controlled his mind. So one day he told his wife that I am now going to abandon my kingdom and I am going to leave behind everything and going to seek shelter in the forest. And going to the forest, I will go there and perform spiritual practices to attain moksha. So that's exactly what he does. His wife tries to dissuade him. But although his wife tries to dissuade him, he refuses and he goes out on his own. He leaves his beautiful wife, he leaves his kingdom, his throne, he leaves his courtiers, his subjects, his treasury, everything. And simply wearing a ragged cloth around him, he goes to the forest. So his wife lets him go and she continues to run the kingdom. And after some time, after a few years are over, she decides that she should visit her husband and see what progress he has made. So by virtue of her yogic powers, her siddhis, she finds out where he is and she goes and she approaches him. But when she approaches him, she doesn't approach him as his wife. She takes the form of a yogi. She takes the form of a muni, and carrying a pot in her hand and beads in the other hand, she goes as a male muni and approaches him. So when King Sikkidhoja sees this gentleman approaching him, he sees the muni approaching him, he asks him what his name is. So he says, my name is Kumbha Muni. Kumbha means one who is born from a pot. So he says, I am Kumbha Muni. So immediately Sikkidhoja offers great respect to him, because he can see that Kumbha Muni is not walking on the ground. He is walking 1 foot above the ground by virtue of the yogic siddhi that she has acquired. So Kumbha Muni asks her husband that, how are you? Are you happy? Have you made great progress? Have you found bliss? Have you found contentment? So King Sikkidhoja says that I have not made any progress. I have not found peace of mind. What to speak of bliss or happiness? I have not even found peace of mind. I am still miserable. I am still disturbed. After spending so many years in the forest in renunciation, I am still disturbed. So Kumbha Muni tells him 2 stories. One story he tells him is of a very rich man who wanted to find the Chintamani. What is Chintamani? Chintamani is a precious stone. If you have that stone, all desires can be fulfilled. It's a touchstone. So this man was eagerly seeking out this Chintamani, this touchstone which could fulfill everything. And this touchstone incidentally was always there on his dressing table. But although he felt that this could be Chintamani because it is lying there on his dressing table, he thought that I have not performed any tapasya. I have not performed any austerities. I have not taken great pains, nor have I suffered greatly. So since I have not performed austerities or tapasya without suffering, how can I get Chintamani? Therefore this must not be the Chintamani, this must not be the touchstone. So abandoning all things, he goes to the forest. And in the forest he finds some broken glass. And taking this broken glass, he hugs it to his chest, thinking that it is a touchstone. And this broken glass, it cuts him. But still he feels that this is the touchstone that he has found. So Kumbha Muni tells him, you are like this man. Chintamani, the touchstone, the secret of happiness, bliss is there in your home. But you have left your home, you have left your kingdom, you have left your dependence, and you have come here seeking the touchstone which is actually lying there on your dressing table. And you have taken the broken glass of austerity, and now you have cut yourself with this broken glass of austerity, thinking that you have actually achieved great things. But now you are wise, you have realized you have achieved nothing. He also tells him the story of the elephant. That once upon a time, there was an elephant, and this elephant was bound in chains, iron chains. And these iron chains, although they bound the elephant very tightly, the elephant was very big and strong, used the huge tusks which he had to shatter the chains completely. And having shattered those chains, he escaped into the forest. And the mahout who was seated on the head of the elephant was thrown on the ground. But the mahout, although he was thrown on the ground, was not dead. So this mahout, he got up and he prepared a pit for the male elephant and covered it with leaves and grass. And sure enough, the elephant came again and he walked onto the pit. He fell in the pit. Again he was captured. Again he was bound by chains. So same thing has happened to you, Kumbha Muni explains. That you are the elephant and you have been bound with chains of desire. Actually, iron chains, they rust and they become weaker with time. But the chains of desire, they don't rust. They become stronger with time. The chains of desire, they become stronger with time. But still using your 2 tusks of Vivek and Vairagya, of discrimination and renunciation, you have broken these chains of desire. And you have escaped into the forest. But because your real enemy has not been destroyed, but merely temporarily dislodged, he has again trapped you and put you into a great difficulty. So King Sikkidhoja looks at his wife, now in the form of Kumbha Muni, and he asks him that, what have I done wrong? I have given up everything in the world and I have sought spiritual solace. So what could I have done wrong? So Kumbha Muni tells him, and yes, you think you have given up everything, but actually you are not at all renounced. You are not at all renounced. So Sikhidwaja says, what else do I have to give up? I have given up my wife, my family, my wealth, my kingdom. Alright, he says, maybe my grass hut is still there. So he takes a torch and he sets fire to his grass hut. Then into that grass hut, he takes off his torn cloth that is wrapped around him, he throws that also into the fire. And now standing naked before Kumbha Muni, he says that now I am renounced, now I have nothing. Look at me. So Kumbha Muni says that you have still not renounced, my dear friends. You have still not renounced anything at all. So Kumbha Muni looks around him and says, well, what else I have to renounce? Okay, maybe I am in a beautiful lush green forest. Now I shall go to the desert. So he goes to the desert where there is no greenery, no vegetation, where the temperature is intolerable. And now looks at Kumbha Muni and tells him that now I have renounced everything. So he said, still you have not renounced anything. So Sikhidwaja looks and says, now what is there to renounce? Then he looks at his body. He said, yes, I have my body to renounce. So he goes to the top of a cliff and he says that now I renounce my body, and he's about to jump from the cliff. So at that time Kumbha Muni stops him and says, why are you going to give up your body? Don't give up your body, because your body is not the cause of your distress. After all, what can your body do to trouble you? You should actually seek that which is the cause of the agitation in your body. Just like the wind rustles the leaves, just like the wind moves the plants and the branches of the tree, so also there is something in this body which disturbs the body and agitates it. There is something in the body which puts the body into motion. That is what you have to renounce. And that, Kumbha Muni explains to him, is none other than the mind. So Sikhidwaja asks, well, what is the mind then? Explain to me what is the mind. Because if you explain to me what is the mind, then I can actually try to give it up. So Sikhidwaja is explained by Kumbha Muni. He says that the mind, your greatest enemy, is nothing other than ignorance. Another name for mind is ignorance. Another name for mind is ignorance, because what is the mind? The mind actually does not exist. It actually consists of a bundle of unfulfilled desires and impressions that you have carried forth with you. Every desire that you have had which has not yet been fulfilled is present as your mind. The bundle of unfulfilled desires, the vasanas that you possess, that is your mind. All your past impressions, every past impression that you have of events past in your life, your mental impressions or your karmas, they are actually existing as your mind. So your past karmas are your mind. Your unfulfilled desires are your mind. That is what your mind really consists of. That is why your mind is termed as ignorance. He also explains to him that what is the seed of the mind? The seed of the mind is ahankar. The shoot is the intelligence. The stem is the mind itself. And the leaves and branches are rag and dvesh, likes and dislikes. That when the mind arrogates and says, I, me and mine, the mind is termed as ego. When the mind discriminates and says this is right and that is wrong, the mind is termed as intelligence. When the mind feels that I like and do not like, it is termed as manas. When the mind actually remembers, it is known as chit or memory. So, when it desires and rejects, it is sankalpa and vikalpa. So, this is the nature of the mind. And in actual fact, this mind is the cause of all distress. Because what happens, I have explained to you in my course, that when you die, you leave this body, the spirit soul leaves the body, but spirit soul takes with it its companion, and that companion is the mind. Just like Sinbad the sailor carries the old man of the sea on his back. When you leave your body, you carry with you your subtle body or your mind. And it's your subtle body or your mind which is actually a bundle of unfulfilled desires and your karmas which forces you to accept a new body. It is your mind and mind only that makes you accept another body. That is the cause of rebirth. So in fact, one who has learned to tackle the mind is one who has learned to be free of the cycle of birth and death. So he asks her that how can I get rid of this mind? How can I solve the problems that I am suffering from simply by controlling the mind? So Kumbha Muni explains to him that if you want to control the mind, you should understand that you have to use a similar substance to control a similar substance. Just like if you have mud on your foot, you can take sand, and by putting sand on the mud, you can rub the mud off, because the sand will absorb the water and will allow you to make your foot clean. If you have diarrhea from drinking milk, if you take buttermilk or if you take dahi, your diarrhea can be solved. If you have a thorn in one foot, you can take another thorn to take out the first thorn. So also he explains that if you want to conquer the mind, you have to use the spiritual mind. That if you want to control your material mind, you have to use your spiritual mind. If you want to control your ashuddh manas, you should use your shuddh manas. The impure mind is controlled by the pure mind. The material mind is cured or tackled only by the pure mind. Material mind by the spiritual mind. The impure mind by the pure mind. But first of all, you should know what is the difference between the spiritual mind and the material mind. The spiritual mind is attracted to God. This is the first characteristic of the spiritual mind. This is the first and most important characteristic of the spiritual mind. It is attracted to God. This is the nature of the spiritual mind, is to be attracted to God. Therefore, it seeks out God and godliness in all things. It seeks solitude or the association of devotees. It seeks the association of Mahatmas and sons. It seeks solace in the scripture. It is entertained by kirtan. It is pacified by the chanting of the holy name. This is the nature of the pure mind or the spiritual mind. It is a mind which is attracted to the higher. And the impure mind or the material mind, it is attracted to things of the world. It is attracted to material pleasures of the senses that actually take you away from God. It is attracted to video, movie, TV. It is attracted to novels. It is attracted towards all sinful activities. This is the nature of the impure mind. And simply by starving the impure mind and feeding the pure mind, the impure mind can be destroyed. So she explains, Kumbha Muni explains to him that if you want to conquer your mind, simply use your spiritual mind or your shuddh manas to control the lower mind by rejecting all activities that make the impure mind strong, and instead engage in activities that make the pure mind stronger, and naturally it shall come out as the victor. So this is exactly what Sikhi-Dwaja does. He chants the holy name, he does kirtan, he does meditation, he worships God, and by performing all these activities, eventually in course of time, he tells Kumbha Muni that now I have controlled my mind, now I am peaceful, now I am happy. So to test whether he has really controlled his mind, Kumbha Muni tells him that I will see you in the evening, and when I see you in the evening, I will decide what further things you should continue doing. Until then, you keep on continuing on the same path that you are. In the evening, when Kumbha Muni comes, he says that my dear King Sikhi-Dwaja, I have received a curse from Durvas Muni. I was traveling, and when I was traveling, I met Durvas Muni, and because I happened to insult him, he gave me a curse. And the curse that he has given me is that I shall become at nightfall. Every night I shall become a young and lusty woman. At every night I shall become a young and a lusty woman. So Sikkhi looks at him and says, well, whatever God does, He does it for the best, so don't worry. If that is what He wills, let it be. In the night you become a lusty woman. You shall still be my spiritual master, you shall still be my guru. And come nightfall, and Kumbh Muni becomes a young, beautiful, seductive woman. So after 3 days, Kumbh Muni, in the form of this young, beautiful, seductive woman, approaches King Sikkhi and says that I know that I am your spiritual master, I know that I am Kumbh Muni, but at nightfall what happens? I become a young, beautiful, lusty woman and I cannot control myself when I see a young, handsome man like you. So my request to you is that why don't we get married? We can perform Gandharva Vivah here. And you please become my husband and keep me happy. Because what to do when I am in this body, these urges have to be fulfilled. So King Sikkhi says, alright, whatever you say, I will do because you are my spiritual master. Whatever instruction you give me, I shall fulfill. So they perform Gandharva Vivah and he lives with her as his wife. In the daytime he becomes Kumbh Muni. In the night time he becomes this young lusty woman who is his wife. So after some time, this Queen Chudalai, who is actually Kumbh Muni, who has now taken the form of this young lusty woman, she decides to test him even further. So she now comes before him in the form of King Indra. And coming before him in the form of King Indra, she tells him that, my dear King Sikkhi, we have observed your austerities and everybody in Indralok is highly enamored of you. All the great celestial maidens in the heavenly planets, they want to enjoy with you. So I have been sent here by special request from Urvashi and Rambha, who want me to bring you back so they can enjoy with you. And please come to heaven, you will have great heavenly delights and the most beautiful celestial maidens in the 3 worlds will entertain you and enjoy with you. So King Sikkhi looks at him and says, thank you so much, but I am content and happy. I am engaging my spiritual practices here. I am following the instructions of my spiritual master and I am completely content. There is no need to disturb me at all. So the Queen Chudalai, who is the form of Kumbh Muni, who has now taken the form of Indra, she is very happy that her husband has controlled his mind to the extent that although he is living with her in the form of a young lusty woman, he has actually controlled his mind that he is not tempted by somebody outside. So she decides to test him even further. And to test him even further, at nightfall, when she takes the form of a young lusty woman, when King Sikkhi is coming to meet her, she gives him the illusion that she is embracing a young, handsome, naked man and enjoying with him. So King Sikkhi comes there, he sees this woman he has married embracing a young man, and seeing them over there, he says, please excuse me, and he goes away. So immediately this woman leaves the man and runs after him and says that I am so sorry. I am very sorry for what I have done. But what could I do? When I am imprisoned in this body of mine is not controlled because it has so many desires. And I gave in to the desires of this body. So please forgive me and please accept me as your wife. So King Sikkhi looks at her and says that no problem. Just go back and continue doing whatever you are doing. I am happy, I am content, I am peaceful. I am not disturbed, I am not agitated. I am not even thinking about what I saw. Please go complete whatever you are doing and then come back. No problem. So then Queen Chudalai realizes that now he has actually controlled his mind. Now he has actually fulfilled the goal of life, that is to control the mind. And having controlled the mind and realized God, he is completely blissful and content under all circumstances. So she now reveals to him that what he saw was merely an illusion created by his yogic powers, And so also Kum Muni and Indra were also illusions created by her, and that she is none other than Queen Chudalai, his own wife. And after explaining this to him, she asks him, that, what do you want now? Do you want to remain here in the forest, or would you like to go back to your kingdom? He says, your instruction is my command. Whether I go to the kingdom or whether I stay in the forest, it's all the same to me. You tell me what you want me to do, and that I shall do. So she tells him, come, let's go back to the kingdom. Now you can look after the kingdom. And so they go back and they look after the kingdom and live happily ever after in their lifetimes. And at the end of their life, they go back to Godhead. Because the secret of controlling your mind is simply this, that if you want to control your mind, you have to engage in activities of the spiritual mind, and you have to starve the material mind of the activities that will strengthen it. There is no neutral activity, please remember that. If you think that you are performing an activity which is not a spiritual activity, then you can be sure you are strengthening the lower mind. If an activity is not strengthening the higher mind, you have to be sure it is strengthening the lower mind. And the lower mind is so deceitful that it will constantly convince you. It will always convince you that what you are doing is the right thing. Because the mind consists of two components. It consists of the conscious component and the subconscious component. There is a part of the mind that you can see, and there is a part of the mind that you do not see. It's like an iceberg. If you see ice floating, 1/10 is above the surface and 9/10 is below the surface. That is the nature of the mind. Just like ice which floats 1/10 above and 9/10 below, the mind is only 1/10 above and 9/10 below. This is the nature of the mind. Once upon a time, there was a great ship that was launched, and that ship was known as the Titanic. It was called the unsinkable ship. Why was it called unsinkable ship? Because it was made of iron, and it was a big steamer, and they thought that nothing could sink that ship. It was called the unsinkable ship. But that ship sank. Why did it sink? It was sunk by an iceberg. When they saw the iceberg, they thought that nothing can happen to this ship. It's such a tiny little iceberg, because they saw only so much of the iceberg. 9/10 of the iceberg was beneath the surface. And when the ship passed, that iceberg ripped open the bottom of that ship, and that ship filled up with water and sank to the bottom of the sea. So also, many a ship has been launched in spiritual life. Many a ship has been launched in spiritual life, and it has been called an unsinkable ship. Many a ship has been launched in spiritual life, and it has been called an unsinkable ship. And such people have reached great exalted positions in spiritual life. But because they have underestimated the mind, what has happened? The subconscious mind has damaged them, and before they have known what is happening, they have gone underwater again. So that is the nature of the mind. Never underestimate it. Even if you don't think you are doing wrong, please judge not from your opinion but from Shastra Chakshu. What is Shastra Chakshu? Shastra Chakshu means looking at it with the eyes of scripture. Because when the scripture says something, it is absolute. It has been said, Ya Shastra Vidam Uchsrijaya Vartate Kama Karata Na Sa Siddhim Avapnoti Na Sukham Na Param Gatim. For one who disobeys the injunctions of scripture, for such a person, there is no peace, there is no happiness, and finally there is no perfection and no final destination. So judge your activities from the scripture. Note that it's your subconscious mind which will eventually cause your destruction, because the subconscious mind contains so many things you would not like to reveal. That's why it remains subconscious. It's like the story of Bluebeard. Bluebeard was a very famous man. He married hundreds of women, and after he married them, and after taking their dowry and their money and whatever else they had, he would kill them and he would hang them in the closet. Closet means the big cupboard. There's a room in the form of a cupboard. He would hang them over there after killing them and making all their money. But one day what happened? His last wife got the key to that cupboard, and she opened the key to that cupboard. And when she opened the key to the cupboard, she saw all the skeletons there. And therefore he was God. All of us have got skeletons in our cupboard. All of us are Bluebeards. All of us have done so many things in the past that we don't want them to see the light of day. So what happens to those things we have done which we do not want to see the light of day? We have put them in our own Bluebeard's cupboard. And that's our subconscious mind. And suddenly at some time in the future, somebody is going to open that door. And when that door is open, the skeleton will come tumbling out. And that will be your test. Because people can resist temptation from outside. But when temptation comes from inside, that is difficult to resist. External temptation is easy to resist because it comes from outside. You can say no. When temptation comes from the subconscious, when temptation comes from within, then first of all you have to recognize it as a temptation. That is the biggest obstacle. If you don't recognize it, then you never know when it catches you. It will come secretly, silently in the night and puts a noose around your throat. Before you're knowing what's happened, it has got you. So always beware the mind, because the mind is the cause of your destruction. The mind is the greatest enemy. In fact, it has been said that the mind can fulfill many things if you can control it, but if you can't control the mind can lead to your destruction. In fact, there's a famous story of a man who was given a genie in a bottle, Aladdin's lamp. And he was told, you rub this Aladdin's lamp and the genie will come out. And when this genie comes out, you give him any command, he can fulfill it. So this is exactly what he did. But after he rubbed Aladdin's lamp, he read the small print on the lamp. You know, when you sign a contract, there's always some small print which your people are wishing that you will not read. And the small print, it was written on the lamp that if you do not keep this genie engaged, he will eat you up. So he tried his best to keep the genie engaged. But the genie was doing things so quickly and so rapidly that this poor man could not sleep. He asked him for wealth, he gave him wealth. He asked him to do this work, he did. He asked him to build a palace, he built it in no time. And the faster and faster he gave him the commands, the faster and faster he fulfilled it. And he realized that sooner or later this genie is going to eat him up. So he told the genie that, my dear genie, you please put a ladder up against the wall. And after you put a ladder against the wall, you climb up that ladder. And when you reach the top of the ladder, you climb down. And you keep on doing this until I think of something for you to do. And when he did this, he found that he was at peace from the genie. So, where is the genie? The genie is our mind. All of us have that genie. And that genie is out of the bottle. It's too late to push him back there. And that genie can fulfill many things. He can do many wonderful things. But unfortunately, if you do not keep this genie engaged, this genie that is your mind will eat you up. And he is eating you up. He is eating all of us up. But there is one way to keep the genie engaged. And what is that way? This is the ladder. And you have to keep the genie engaged on this ladder. When you are not doing any useful activity with your mind, keep your genie engaged on this ladder, climbing up the ladder and then climbing down the ladder. And again climbing up the ladder and again climbing down the ladder. And if you do this to your genie and keep him engaged constantly when you are not doing anything useful, your genie will not eat you up. And by climbing up and climbing down the ladder, I mean chanting the holy name. In the Brihad Naradiya Purana, it has been mentioned, Harer Nam, Harer Nam, Harer Nam eva kevalam. Kalau nasteva 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 nasti eva gatir anyatha. There is no other way, there is no other way, there is no other way to control your mind other than by chanting the holy name, chanting the holy name, chanting the holy name. Just imagine that when you drive a car, what happens? When you reach the traffic light, if you keep the engine running and you keep your foot on the clutch, your clutch plate will get worn out. You have to put your gear in neutral. You have to put your mind in neutral. You have to put your mind in neutral by chanting the holy name. So whenever you are not doing anything useful, immediately put your mind in neutral gear in its position of rest, in its natural transcendental position as servant of God, chanting His name. And simply by performing this activity, you will get immediate relief from the distress of your mind. Many people think that, oh, I am already chanting. क्या है ये क्या बोल रहा है? Every time chant chant बोल रहा है. But I am already chanting. I am not getting relief. Are you chanting all the time? If you want relief all the time, you have to chant all the time. Krishna says, Ye yatha mam prapadyante tam tathaiva bhajami aham. To the extent that you surrender to me, to that extent I reward you. I am not just saying chanting 16 rounds in the morning and then ho gaya and tossing it in the back of the cupboard. I am talking about chanting all the time. Constantly chant the holy name. Kirtaniya sada hari. Always chant the holy name. There should never be a time when you are not chanting the holy name if you are not doing something constructive and useful. If you simply remember this one thing, your life will be completely different. But we often slacken in our intensity of chanting the holy name. We always think that we can engage our mind in something useful, when actually what we are simply thinking is dragging us down and further into distress. If you are not doing something useful, that means you are not serving God in some way with your mind, you are serving Maya. There is no two ways. It's only black and white. There are no gray areas. It has been said, Rite artham yat pratiyeta na pratiyeta cha atmani yad vidyat atmano mayam yatha bhaso tathatama. That everything that is not connected with me, that is understood to be Maya. Krishna says in the Srimad Bhagavatam. So anything that you are doing which is not connected with God directly or indirectly, that is illusion. Therefore, that is indication for stopping that activity and chanting the holy name. It is said that every time you open your mouth to talk about something that is not related to God, it's compared to the croaking of a frog. You know what the frog does? It opens its mouth, quack, 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 it croaks. And simultaneously with its rear leg, it thumps the ground. What is it doing? It is trying to attract the opposite sex. But as a result of this thumping and croaking, what happens? The snake realizes that there is something delicious and tasty. And the snake comes and swallows up the frog. So also, we are all subject to the snake of time. Kala is a serpent. And that serpent is waiting for us to open our mouths on some useless topic. And it is simply waiting to come and swallow us up. Life is short. Open the paper every day, you will see how short life is. And the most unexpected people die in the most unexpected ways. You never know when your turn will come. So do not waste a single moment. With every rising and setting of the sun, you are one day closer to death. Unless you are chanting the holy name, then you are one day closer to immortality. Because by chanting the holy name, we become free of our mind, we become established in God consciousness, and we control our mind. And what happens when we control our mind? Jeet atmana prashantasya paramatma samayita sitoshana sukhadukeshu tathaman apmanayo. For one who has controlled his mind, Paramatma or God is already reached. And for him, heat and cold, joy and sorrow, honor and dishonor, they are all the same. Then no matter what miseries come to you in life, you are not affected by them. Dukheshu anudvignamana sukheshu vigataspriya. Vita raga bhaya krodha stitadi muni uchyate. In the midst of misfortune, your mind will not be shaken. In the cause of great excitement, you will not be excited. You will be free of attachment, fear and anger. You will see everything as equal. It is said, Jnana Vijnana Triptatma Kutasto Vijayatindriya Yukta iti uchyate yogi samalostrasma kanchana. That one who has achieved this control of mind, who has achieved God, he is unshaken by misery, he is not excited in happiness, honor and dishonor are equal to him, heat and cold, happiness and sorrow are equal. If you put before him gold and a stone, he looks at gold and stone in the same light. He looks at gold and stone in the same light. And furthermore, he says, Suryan mitrarya udasina madhyasya dvesha bandhushu sadhu papeshu sama buddhir vishishyate. Furthermore, everybody you come across, you look at them equally. Whether he is a friend, a mediator, an enemy, whether he is a sinner or whether he is a saint, you look at them with equal vision. That is a sign of a controlled mind. And you will live in unshakable happiness and peace. Sometimes people say that, oh, you're talking about big things, but I don't have faith in what you're saying. Doesn't matter if you don't have faith. Just chant. I'm repeating to you what Mother Teresa told me. She said, even if you don't have faith, doesn't matter, just pray incessantly. She took out a japmala and she showed me a japmala and she said, just pray incessantly. And if you pray incessantly, what will happen? You will develop faith. Even if you don't have faith to begin with, by constantly praying, by constantly chanting God's name, faith will develop in you. If you nurture that faith, what will happen? That faith will become transformed to love. When you have love, love cannot sit still. Love wants to serve. You cannot sit still, you want to serve God in some way. Something you must do. So that love automatically becomes service. And when you perform service, she said, you get unshakable peace. So first, pray incessantly, chant incessantly, kirtaniya sadahari. Then faith will come even if you don't have it now. And that faith, if you nurture through bhakti yoga, it will become love. And because where there is love, there must be service. You will serve God in some way, and when you serve God, you will get unshakable peace. So, Hare Krishna, thank you. Any questions? Yes. He's saying that what I said is very difficult in Kali. What is difficult? Chanting the holy name is difficult?
Controlling the mind.
Controlling the mind means chanting the holy name. Is it difficult?
All the time chanting is difficult.
No, it's not difficult. I never ask anybody to do anything which I don't do. Please note this. I never ask you to do anything that I do not do. Doesn't matter if you cannot carry the beads. I always carry with me this counter. This counter I chant, and I count what I chant. This counter is always in my pocket. It's on a chain so I don't lose it. I work from 8 o'clock in the morning till 8 o'clock in the evening most of the days. And still I find time to chant somewhere around 24 rounds. Anyone works more hours than I do? Anyone works more than 12 hours over here? No? So, if I can do that, why can you not do it? Every spare moment in your lunch break, in 15 minutes in between, waiting for somebody to come and meet you, in between things that you are doing, you can always find time to chant. When your mind is not engaged in something useful, chant. Nobody can say they don't have time to chant. It's not the truth. Your mind is preventing you from chanting. Your mind is preventing you from chanting. Your mind is telling you that I can't do 16 rounds, so why I should chant at all? Maybe one day when I can do 16 rounds, then I will do chanting. Or the mind will tell you that I can't do quality chanting, so what's the use? Better not to do it. Alright? You just chant. By constantly chanting, the chanting will become quality chanting. But if you don't start chanting, you will never get to the idea of quality chanting. So, whether you are chanting with quality, without quality, with time, without time, with concentration, without concentration, just chant. Every word of God that you mention has got an effect. Of course, if you chant with concentration, it has the maximum effect. If you chant without concentration, it has got less effect. If you chant distractedly, it has even less effect. But the effect is always there. It's better than doing anything else. So by using your tongue in chanting the holy name, at least you are preventing your tongue by being engaged in something else. That itself is a positive effort. Not doing something negative is positive. So at least you do that, and then gradually you can go up. But your mind, which is your greatest enemy, will give you a million reasons why you can't chant. It will give you 1 million reasons. Everyone can write a book on the reasons why they cannot chant their rounds. Each of you can write a big bestseller on why they cannot chant. They will all have big, big volumes, reasons why I cannot chant. But there's only one reason why you cannot chant, that is your mind. The mind knows that that is medicine for it, and it doesn't want the medicine. It's like my son. When I have to give my son his medicine, like when he's not ill, when I have to give him his medicine when he's not ill. Daddy, not now, after my food I'll have. No, Daddy, let me have my milk. I'll have one sweet first, then I'll come. Let me wash my face, then I'll have. Always it is trying to push off the medicine. It's always trying to push it off because medicine is bitter. So that is most bitter for the mind is to chant. So the mind is always saying, no, no, not now. Now I don't have time. Now I have to do this. Now I have to do that. Now I'm busy with something else. No, no, now I'm so tired that chanting won't be of quality. Better not to do it anyway. So this is your mind. So to defeat your mind, you have to chant. Whether your chanting is good or bad or mediocre or useless chanting, doesn't matter, at least chant. Your tongue is engaged in something useful. Even if it is not useful, it's being prevented from being engaged in something useless. So always chant the name of God, Kirtaniya Sadahari. Any other questions?
Why do you have to count it? Why can't you just chant without...
Once again, you have to count because your mind is your greatest enemy. Your mind is convincing you that you have chanted 1 million rounds of God, but when you count and you see, I have not finished even 16 rounds. One person actually told me, he said, I am chanting easily 16 rounds. I said, okay, one day you chant, take this counter and chant and tell me. Next day he told me I was not even chanting 1 round. Because I was counting, I came to know. Because your mind is deceiving you, your mind is cheating you. Your mind is telling you, I am Haridas Thakur, I am chanting 300,000 names of God every day. But when you actually count, then you see, Arey, kitna kiya hai? Bahut baki hai. So this is the thing. Because your mind is your enemy, therefore your mind will tell you, count kyon karna hai? Chant karo. But actually you have to chant because your mind is deceiving you into believing you are chanting endlessly and constantly and wonderfully. So you need something objective to tell you how much you have chanted. Any other questions? Yes?
Why is it necessary to have 16 rounds? Why not less up?
Well, I never said that you should chant 16 rounds. I told you Kirtaniya Sadahari. I said constantly chant God's name. Actually, if you count your breaths that you take in the daytime, throughout the day, you take 21,600 breaths a day. So the minimum you should do, I feel, is that you should count at least one name of God for every breath that you take. If you chant 16 rounds a day, it works out to approximately a little more than that. If you chant 16 rounds of Hare Krishna Maha Mantra, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. 16 words, 16 names of God. If you chant that 16 rounds, you calculate, it works out a little more than that. So that is a minimum. For every breath, if you can't remember God, then what is the use of living? Better you don't breathe. Any other questions?
You got all the answers.
Alright, then I think we should start controlling our minds right now. Let's have the lights off.